The auction hall on Karen Station had never been this quiet before. Usually the massive underground chamber was filled with shouting, laughter, and the sound of credits changing hands. Criminal empires bought weapons there. Warlords purchased soldiers. Rich collectors paid fortunes for rare alien creatures stolen from forgotten worlds. But tonight, fear ruled the room. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat frozen in silence beneath the red neon lights hanging over the arena floor. Even the most dangerous men in the sector avoided looking directly at the stage. At the center stood a young alien girl locked inside a reinforced energy cage. Thin silver chains wrapped tightly around her wrists, neck, and ankles, glowing brighter every few seconds as if struggling to hold something back. Her dark white hair fell across her face, hiding most of her expression. She looked weak, starved, broken, but the bodies beside the cage told a different story. 3 armored guards lay dead on the floor. One had his chest crushed inward like paper. Another had deep claw marks carved through metal armor. A third guard was missing entirely except for a trail of blood leading toward the wall. The surviving guards kept their distance, their plasma rifles shaking nervously. Then the girl slowly lifted her head. Her glowing silver eyes swept across the crowd, and the entire room felt cold. Subject 7X, the auctioneer announced, forcing confidence into his voice. Final surviving member of the Veylari species. A giant hologram activated above the stage. The audience watched burning planets appear in the air. Destroyed fleets. Exploding cities. Mountains covered in bodies. The Veylari were engineered during the First Galactic War. The auctioneer continued carefully. Enhanced strength. Extreme regeneration. Combat instincts beyond artificial intelligence. Another image appeared. A single Veylari warrior ripping through an army of soldiers alone. The Galactic Council declared the species too dangerous to exist. Their extermination was completed 21 years ago. The hologram vanished. Only the girl remained. Silent. Motionless. She cannot be controlled, the auctioneer admitted nervously. Every previous owner has died. Right on cue. Crack. One of the glowing chains around the girl's wrist snapped apart. The entire chamber exploded into panic. Weapons were raised instantly. Security drones descended from the ceiling. Several buyers rushed toward the exits. But the alien girl never moved. She simply stared at the crowd with empty, exhausted eyes. Not angry, not violent, just tired, like someone who had already lost everything worth fighting for. Starting bid at 2 million credits, the auctioneer shouted desperately. Silence. Nobody answered. Not even the crime syndicates wanted her. Then, from the back of the chamber, a calm human voice broke the silence. I'll take her. The room froze. Every head turned toward a lone human standing near the rear balcony. Elias Kane, former military engineer. No armor, no weapons, no guards. Just a simple dark coat and tired eyes. The auctioneer stared at him in disbelief. Human, do you understand what you are buying? Elias looked directly at the alien girl. For the first time, her emotionless face changed slightly. Confusion, maybe even shock. Then Elias spoke quietly. She's not an object. Laughter erupted across the chamber, until the girl suddenly spoke in perfect human language. Her voice was soft, cold, and completely emotionless. You should have left me to die. The laughter stopped immediately. Meanwhile, hidden scanners deep inside Karen Station activated silently. A classified signal transmitted into deep space. Veylari survivor confirmed. Termination protocols beginning. The moment Elias brought the alien girl onto the cargo ship Nomad's Run, everything changed. The crew looked at her like death had just walked through the loading ramp. Captain Mira stepped between Elias and the rest of the crew, her hand resting near her plasma pistol. You brought a Veylari onto my ship? She snapped. Are you insane? The other crew members backed away immediately. Nobody wanted to stand too close to the girl. Stories about the Veylari existed on every world in the galaxy. Entire colonies had disappeared overnight during the Old War. Military fleets had been torn apart without survivors. Parents frightened children with stories about silver-eyed monsters hiding in the dark between stars. And now one of them stood silently inside their cargo bay. The glowing suppression chains wrapped around her arms hummed constantly, struggling to contain whatever power lived inside her. Every few minutes, sparks burst from the restraints like overloaded machines. But the girl never reacted. She sat quietly in the corner of the cargo hold with her knees against her chest. She refused food, ignored questions, didn't sleep, didn't move. Sometimes the crew caught her staring out the ship's window toward deep space for hours without blinking, like she was waiting for something or remembering something terrible. Finally, after 3 days of silence, Elias sat across from her holding a tray of untouched food. "What's your name?" he asked softly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, barely above a whisper, "Lyra." That single word changed everything. Because monsters were not supposed to have names. That night, the Nomad's Run entered an uncharted sector while transporting illegal mining supplies through deep space. Outside the ship, endless darkness stretched across the stars. Then suddenly, everything died. The lights shut off instantly. Engines failed. Life support flickered. Warning sirens screamed through the halls. Captain Mira cursed as the cockpit screens turned black. "EMP blast," someone shouted. Then came a sound that froze the entire crew. Heavy metal footsteps. Outside the hull, something was crawling across the ship. Moments later, emergency scanners lit up red. Boarding detected. A massive pirate raider emerged from the darkness like a hunting beast. Grappling harpoons slammed into the cargo ship, while armed raiders burned through the airlocks. The pirates stormed aboard within minutes. Their leader, a scarred reptilian mercenary covered in armor plating, walked calmly through the ship holding a pulse rifle. "We'll take the cargo," he growled. "The credits and the Veylari girl." The crew stared at him in shock. Then the pirate smiled. The Galactic Council placed a bounty worth entire planets on her head. Instant panic spread across the ship. Several crew members immediately turned toward Lyra. One terrified engineer grabbed her chain restraints and shoved her forward. "Take her," he yelled desperately. "Just leave us alone." Then the chains broke. Every glowing restraint around Lyra's body shattered at once. Silence filled the corridor. Everyone prepared to die. But Lyra didn't attack the crew. She attacked the pirates. In one blur of movement, she crossed the hallway faster than human eyes could follow. A pirate slammed into the ceiling hard enough to crack metal. Another had his rifle crushed in his hands before being thrown through a wall. The corridor became chaos. Screams, gunfire, flying bodies, and Lyra moving through it all like a living storm. Within seconds, the boarding team was destroyed. The surviving pirates fled in terror. Then, just as suddenly as it began, Lyra collapsed to her knees. Breathing hard, weak, Elias rushed toward her and caught her before she hit the floor. That was when he saw the scars across her back. Long surgical cuts, metal implants buried beneath her skin. Experiment marks. The Galactic Council hadn't simply hunted the Veylari. They had turned them into experiments. As the damaged cargo ship escaped into deep space, the dying pirate captain sent one final transmission. "You idiots still don't understand." His bloody smile widened. "The galaxy doesn't fear her species because they're monsters. It fears what they were created to kill." The farther the Nomad's Run traveled into the outer systems, the more dangerous the truth became. Elias spent days locked inside the ship's old data room, searching through forbidden military archives, black market records, and encrypted war reports buried deep inside forgotten networks. What he found made his blood run cold. Everything the galaxy believed about the Veylari was a lie. They were never conquerors, never invaders, never monsters. Decades earlier, long before humanity became important in galactic politics, an unknown machine civilization had emerged from deep space. Entire star systems vanished within weeks. Planetary defenses failed instantly. The machines didn't negotiate, didn't retreat, didn't stop. Every major species united against them and lost. until the Veylari entered the war. Old battle footage showed silver-eyed warriors fighting impossible odds against endless mechanical armies. Entire Veylari fleets sacrificed themselves to protect civilian worlds. Millions died, buying time for the rest of the galaxy to survive. They didn't start the war. They ended it. But after the machines disappeared, the Galactic Council grew afraid. Afraid of the Veylari's power. Afraid no army could stop them if they ever turned against the galaxy. And most of all, afraid humanity might one day ally with them. So the Council rewrote history. The Veylari were declared unstable monsters. Extermination orders followed. World by world, they were hunted into extinction while the galaxy celebrated their destruction. Elias stared silently at the glowing screen. The heroes of the galaxy had been erased like criminals, and Lyra had survived it. Later that night, he found her sitting alone near the cargo bay window, staring at the stars. For once, she spoke willingly. Her voice was quiet, empty. "I was 6 when they found us." She described soldiers landing on her homeworld, explosions shaking the sky, fires everywhere, her parents fighting to protect civilians while Council warships bombarded entire cities from orbit. Then came the laboratories, cold white rooms, chains, experiments, scientists carving into her body while discussing her like broken machinery. "They said I was special," she whispered. "They wanted to make the perfect weapon." Elias noticed her hands trembling slightly. "They trained me to kill before I even understood what death was." For the first time since meeting her, he saw tears running down her face. Not tears of fear, tears of loneliness, because everyone she had ever known was gone. Meanwhile, the Council's response arrived faster than expected. An elite warship called the Judgment began hunting them across the outer colonies. Entire stations denied the nomads run permission to dock. Supply ports locked their gates. Government channels labeled Elias and his crew as terrorists protecting a galactic threat. But something unexpected slowly happened aboard the ship. The crew stopped fearing Lyra. After she saved Captain Mira during a pirate ambush, after she carried injured crewmen through a reactor fire, after she quietly repaired parts of the ship during the night without asking for thanks, they began seeing her differently. Not as a monster, as a person. And for the first time in years, Lyra slowly changed too. She smiled once while listening to the crew argue over cards. She laughed quietly at one of Elias's terrible jokes. Ding moments. Small human moments. Moments she had never been allowed to have. Then everything shattered. Without warning, a sharp pain hit Lyra's spine. She collapsed to the floor, screaming. A hidden implant buried inside her body suddenly activated. Red warning lights flashed across the ship. Tracking signal detected. Seconds later, space outside the ship twisted violently. A massive Council warship emerged directly beside them. Boarding alarm screamed through every corridor. Then a cold voice echoed across the communication system. "Return subject 0 immediately." The voice paused, or everyone aboard will be erased. Lyra's face turned pale with terror. Because Subject 0 was not a prison number. It was a title. The title given to the deadliest Veylari ever created. Her. The attack began before the warning sirens even finished sounding. The massive Council warship Judgment slammed magnetic harpoons into the hull of the Nomad's run, tearing through metal like paper. Explosions ripped across the cargo decks as heavily armored soldiers flooded into the ship from every direction. Gunfire echoed through the corridors. Crew members screamed. Smoke filled the air. Captain Mira fired desperately from behind a broken control panel while Elias dragged wounded crewmen toward the med bay. But the Council soldiers kept advancing. Professional, cold, merciless. "They're cutting straight toward Lyra," Mira shouted. Because this was never an arrest. It was an execution. Lyra stood silently near the center corridor as alarms flashed red across the walls. Her silver eyes reflected the chaos around her. Dead crew members, burning wires, blood on the floor. And once again, people were dying because of her. "Give me to them," she whispered to Elias. "If I surrender, the others live." Elias looked at her in disbelief. "No, "You don't understand," Lyra said, her voice breaking slightly. "This is what I was made for." Another explosion shook the ship violently. The lights flickered. More soldiers breached the lower deck. Still, Elias refused. For the first time in her entire life, someone chose her life over their own survival. Then something even more unbelievable happened. The crew stood beside her too. Smugglers, mechanics, runaways, ordinary people with old weapons and damaged armor. Nobody important, nobody powerful, but they fought anyway. Not because they believed they could win, but because they refused to hand someone over to monsters. Lyra watched in stunned silence as Captain Mira covered her from enemy fire, as terrified engineers carried ammunition through burning hallways, as humans risked death for someone the galaxy called monster. Then the Council commander finally appeared on the main screen. An older man in white military armor stared coldly at Lyra. "You still don't understand why you were spared," he said. A hologram suddenly appeared across every monitor on the ship. Dark mechanical vessels, thousands of them, floating silently beyond the outer rim of known space. The machine civilization had returned. "The galaxy is about to face extinction again," the commander continued, "and only Subject Zero can stop them." The horrifying truth hit Lyra instantly. That was why the experiments happened, why they modified her body, why they enhanced her abilities instead of killing her. She had never been meant to survive, only to become the perfect weapon for the next war. A disposable shield for a galaxy that hated her species. Then the impossible happened. Long-range scanners screamed warnings. Space itself began tearing open near the edge of the system. One by one, enormous black machine ships emerged from hyperspace. Thousands of them, endless. Their arrival froze both fleets instantly. Then the slaughter began. A Council cruiser vanished in a burst of white light. Another warship split in half. Entire defense formations collapsed within seconds. Panic spread across military channels as commanders screamed retreat orders. For the first time in decades, the Galactic Council was terrified. And suddenly, the same leaders who hunted Lyra her entire life began begging for her help. But Lyra stood motionless, emotionally shattered. "They kill my people," she whispered. "They turn me into this." She looked at Elias with tears in her glowing eyes. "Why should I save them?" Elias stepped closer, slowly despite the chaos around them. Then he told her the one thing nobody in her life had ever said before. "You are free to choose. Not a weapon, not an experiment, not property, a person." The words hit harder than any weapon ever could. Slowly, Lyra turned toward the burning battlefield outside the ship. Her silver eyes began glowing brighter than ever before. The machine fleet suddenly stopped firing. Every enemy ship locked onto her signal simultaneously. Then thousands of machine vessels turned together toward Earth. The machine fleet ignored every military ship in its path. Council cruisers fired everything they had. Nothing worked. Entire battle formations were erased in seconds as the black mechanical armada moved through space like an unstoppable storm. And all of them were heading toward one destination: Earth. Panic spread across the galaxy when ancient classified records were finally exposed to the public. Decades earlier, before humanity had even discovered faster-than-light travel, the machines had detected Earth. Humanity was marked for extermination long before humans ever reached the stars. But the Veylari had intervened. They sacrificed nearly their entire civilization protecting a species they had never even met. And for that act of loyalty, the Galactic Council betrayed them. The truth shattered galactic society overnight. The so-called monsters had once died saving humanity. Now the machines had returned to finish what they started. Earth's defenses were hopelessly outmatched. Billions of civilians prepared for evacuation while governments collapsed into chaos. The Galactic Council abandoned the Sol system almost immediately. Their fleets retreated. Their leaders ran. But humanity stayed. Elias stood aboard the damaged Nomads, watching emergency broadcasts flood every channel. Ordinary civilian ships from nearby systems were already jumping toward Earth. Mining vessels, Transport freighters. Old cargo haulers barely capable of combat. Thousands of humans volunteered to defend a battle they could never win. Not because they believed survival was possible, but because they refused to abandon each other. Lyra watched the human fleets gather around Earth in silence. No species in the galaxy would do this. Empires protected power. Humans protected people, even strangers, even when terrified. For the first time, Lyra truly understood why the machines feared humanity so much. Humans were fragile alone, emotional, reckless, but together, they became something terrifyingly strong. The final battle began above Earth's atmosphere. The sky itself turned black with warships. Explosions lit the planet like artificial suns as human vessels rammed enemy destroyers to protect evacuation corridors. Pilots with outdated fighters charged directly into impossible odds, knowing they would never return. And at the center of the battlefield, Lyra unleashed her full power. Silver energy exploded across space as she tore through the machine fleet like a living weapon. Massive enemy warships collapsed under her attacks. Entire mechanical formations disintegrated around her. For a moment, the machines actually began retreating. Then they adapted. New enemy ships changed formation instantly. Their weapons evolved. Their shields recalibrated against Lyra's energy. Slowly, the battle turned hopeless again. Human ships started falling one after another. Earth's orbital defenses collapsed. Then Elias made his choice. Without warning, the Nomad's run accelerated directly toward the center of the machine fleet. Captain Mira screamed at him over comms. Lyra realized instantly what he planned. "No," she shouted, but Elias only smiled calmly through the transmission. "You were never the monster they feared," he told her. His voice remained steady even as alarms screamed around him. "You were proof that hope cannot be controlled." Then the Nomad's run vanished into the enemy command core. A blinding explosion ripped across space. The machine fleet froze instantly. Their network shattered. One by one, every enemy ship shut down. Silence spread across the battlefield. The war was over, but Elias Kane never returned. Weeks later, memorials appeared across hundreds of worlds. Not for kings, not for admirals, for one ordinary human who stood up in an auction hall when nobody else would. And beside the largest memorial on Earth stood Lyra. No chance, no fear, no longer a weapon. The last Veylari survivor now protected the people her species once died saving. And across the galaxy, for the first time in generations, humans and Veylari were remembered as heroes together. Final ending line. In the end, the galaxy did not change because of empires, armies, or power. It changed because one human chose kindness when everyone else chose fear.